Let me introduce myself. My name is Layla Hussein. My background, I'm actually a psychotherapist working with FGM survivors. I'm the founder of Dahlia Project, the counseling service that works with women and girls who've experienced human genital mutilation. And I'm also the Global Advocacy Director for the Girl Generation. This is a program funded by the UK government on ending FGM in Africa. But I'm a very proud advisor for the Vavengers. I think just listening to Mabel speak earlier, it took me back because I felt like I was part of that whole process. I remember we had meetings at your mum's living room, kitchen, just the idea of, I actually said, we need to actually just sit back and see what hard work and really people coming together looks like. My husband's in the room and I said to him, this is a vision of London that I love. Just everybody from the whole world all being in this room. So it's really important that, especially with what's happening in the world right now, to see in a space like this really gives me a lot of comfort. And I hope it does the same for all of you in this space. And thank you so much to Conduit for being a great supporter of the work Vavengers is doing, especially the survivors of FGM. And I also want to give a massive thank you. I think in any movement, it's led by survivors. Survivors' voice are really what pushes for these spaces. But also I want to give a big thank you to the women who really fought before us. We stand on a lot of women's shoulders who really had to knock doors down. I remember 20 years ago, FGM wasn't even on the agenda at the Home Office. So just from where we started and coming from, it really just, also reminds me how old I am. I'm still very young, I'm only 21. So before we begin our panel discussion, I just want Sema to say a few words just to kind of set the space a bit more, and then I'll come back to this discussion. Thank you. No.
Rosie, both of them. Not just one. Hello? Yes. Perfect. I think in the past week, we've seen really, really upsetting news. And this is one of the first few times when a war is being documented with such graphic details. Because it's self-documentation, isn't it? Like Mabel said, Layla said, I think it shows really good solidarity that everybody's here. And I know it's really upsetting. I've been really triggered just looking at the things. As someone who grew up in a war zone, it's really hard not to feel for those who are going through it, who are losing lives. I ask everybody to, if you can, please stay late, because we are going to acknowledge someone who's been through all of that, everything that you're seeing, and made it to this side, to basically show our solidarity to that very special person. We don't want to announce it yet, to keep the surprise. But yeah, after the panel talk, there's an amazing artist, Ollie. Ollie, are you in the room? I hope you are. If not, Rosie will sort it out. Who will play guitar and keep us chill. I think it's a very hard conversation. Like Layla said, we need to look after ourselves. We don't want you to just leave after you listen to this. And this room full of people is very unusual. Everybody's here cares about human rights. So get to know one another. And we have the room until late. And stay until Sabrina comes. She will take photos with you and do meet and greet. But yeah, I think that part is more important, the second part of the event, where we acknowledge that very special person.
Thank you. I think there's a conspiracy against us. Thank you so much, Sema, for starting us with that tone. I think also, I'm sure all of you are wondering why an organization that works in FGM is having a conversation around modern slavery. I think one of the areas I've been very passionate about in the work that I'm doing currently, it's around reframing the language around when we're talking about violence, and violence against women and girls, especially violence against women and girls who are black and brown from ethnic minority groups. What do we always say? Well, this is a cultural traditional practice. It's honor killing. So there's an idea just because based on our skin color or where we're from, apparently the language has now changed. And why modern slavery? So even if I use FGM as an example, a lot of people would never actually connect those two. And there's a massive connection. Slavery, it's oppression of another human being, usually by another human being. So when we are, and by the way, I'm going to use the right language. Actually, one thing I would like to encourage you by the end of this discussion today, to stay away from the word tradition, culture, because what we are discussing here, it's violence, it's oppression, it's control of female sexuality. And I think that's the conversation when we are talking about modern slavery. So when a girl or another human being experiences that, we are talking about slavery, we are talking about oppression, we are talking about assault. Touching a child's genitalia is a form of sexual assault. So FGM is not a cultural, traditional practice. And I'm saying this to you as a professional, as a therapist, because that's exactly what my clients are telling me. But also as a survivor, it's really important that survivors, their stories and their experience is acknowledged. Just because of their skin color or where they're from, you don't need to do the PC conversation where you have to be worried about being called racist. Actually, you're racist if you're not actually acknowledging it, because then you're saying it's okay, people that look like this, to be undergoing those forms of violence. So I really want to start with that in our conversation. So, Nina Auk. See, I said, oh my God, I hope I don't pronounce this wrong. Nina, actually, I wanted to start with you first. Maybe just give us a 2-minute, both of you, to just give a description of who you are, the organization you work for, and then I'll come back to my follow-up questions. Yes.
I'm going to use each other's mic. So I'm Nina Auk, for those of you who don't know me. I am best known as London's life coach because I coach UFC fighters, MMA fighters. But my passion is speaking out against honor-based killings and human trafficking because it's affected me personally. I've been speaking about this for the last 3 years, but mainly for the last 2 years, I've really been working hard at getting the message across, and I'm super proud of myself because a lot of non-profits haven't actually got the message across in the way that I have, and they've been working at it for a lot longer than I have. Last April, one of my videos hit 50 million views, and it's still counting. And that means 50 million people know about honor-based killings, human trafficking. But more importantly, victims were coming forward, and I believe in divine timing. I'd set my non-profit up called End Honor Killings in February, and 14,000 and counting men, women, and children have come forward since April. And that was my 97th video that I'd made. You know, first video got literally 2 views, second one got 3, maybe 20 on the fourth. But it's a case of never giving up if it means that much to you. Thank you.
Well, I don't have 50 million likes, so I'm more low profile. Manifesting. She's teaching me manifesting. I'm Samuel Gornall. I am the CEO of this brilliant organization, the Vavengers. God, you all want to be me, I know. So I'm here to talk about my personal story because this is the first time I've actually been asked to talk about my personal story, which Layla will actually do some comments on later. She found it interesting. And we will talk tonight in the context of women and girls. So please, if we don't use men or other genders, it doesn't mean we're not referring to them. It's just in the context of our work and our experience. Just wanted to also make that clear.
Thank you so much, Nina. And actually, I've asked Sema a few times that she should share her story. I think sometimes, well, when you look at her, she looks like a white woman, no? Yeah, let's name it, people. Because I'm sure a lot of you, when you're coming to this today, modern slavery, you're expecting a lot of black people on this panel, but no, it's the other way around. So you can just see the biases we carry all the time. And I think it's really important, especially to the white women in this room, it's really important that white women use your privilege, but also speak about the violence you experience. Because by not doing that, you're constantly isolating women who usually will be the ones who are violated. But actually, if more of us spoke, especially those of you who sit in a privileged position, it's really critical. So I've been encouraging Sema to do this for a while, so I'm really glad you've agreed to do this today, and thank you for doing that, because I think it's important when we can create these kind of spaces to do that. So Nina, my first question is really to you, and I think it'd be really great if you can give this audience a little window into how you got to this space. Why are you even sitting here today?
Does this work? Yes, it does.
Yes,
amazing. It's a good
Finally,
start.
get in there.
My neighbour often speaks to me when I'm coming out. He's an elderly gentleman, lovely guy, and he gives me a flower. This one's not from him, it's from Peter downstairs today. But we are all individual, like this flower. This flower has come from a rose bush, maybe, and each rose has had its own path to growth. It's had its own struggle. And you and I are all individual and beautiful in our own rights, if we know why we're really here. And sometimes our journey doesn't explain that. But my journey, like a lot of you, hasn't been straightforward. And life often starts to pull off the petals and often breaks us and we fall to the floor. And I'm using that for you to understand my life was literally there, because I didn't understand my own life and what was going on. For me, it was normality. I'm born and raised in the United Kingdom, and I speak really well, and you would not think that I've encountered modern-day slavery, but I've encountered it not once, not twice, but several times, unknowingly. I was born into an Indian family, so my parents are from the Punjab, and at the age of 6, my small hands were really struggling to change the duvet cover of my mum's bed, but that was my job. I could barely cover the bottom of this mattress. You know, it used to spring back at me, it still does. But I had to do that. But I'll tell you one thing about going into my mum's room. I loved her room. My little toes would really relish being in the carpet, because in my room, my floors were cold. My mum's room was different shades of pink, and mine was different shades of grey. I used to touch my brother's door because it was soft, and it was painted a really nice Oxford sort of blue, very regal, and I used to like the smoothness of it. But my door wasn't sanded down. It was very basic, and when I would rub my ear against it, because that's what I did, wanting to hear what everybody else was doing in the house, I would catch my hair on the splinters and often have scratches all down my face. My other brother had lots of things in his room, so when I was sent to tidy his room, I didn't know where to start. There were clothes, there were ornaments, there were things. I didn't have things. I had one box, and in that box were my school clothes, my pajamas, and one Indian suit. But otherwise, I just had books and a bare floor, a bare bed, no soft furnishings. And I tell this story because I was only allowed to come out of my room when I was called. I wasn't part of that family. And I thought that was normal. That's just how it is, right? But I could hear them all watching television. I would go down and barely reach the cupboards to get the food ready for them. And in your childhood, you would have had a toy or something that you remember. Well, I remember this blue crate, and I've spoken about it lots of times on podcasts. And this blue crate meant so much to me because I could turn it upside down and I could reach the sink. I could reach the cooker. And I was only 6. And that's what my life was. I was literally a modern-day slave. I had no love. I had no interaction. And I tell you why. Because I was too scared. I was too small. And I was too quiet. Later on, I did end up having to enter a forced arranged marriage. That forced arranged marriage was actually an agreement between 2 parties, my father and his friend. It was a sham wedding. But everyone has arranged marriages in my culture, don't they? But when I got married, I had a small room downstairs, barely the size of a cupboard. There was a tiny makeshift bed, no door. Everyone else slept upstairs. And I never questioned it, because who was I to ask? I was in that house for 2 reasons. I was a domestic servant for my mother-in-law, and I was a sex slave for my father-in-law, because that was the agreement he had made with my father when money had exchanged hands. Was that my fault? I thought it was, because this agreement had come out of a group rape instigated by my own father and several men. And to hide that shame that my culture gives so much importance to, this agreement was made. So as a slave, I was handed on to somebody else. And what I'm saying is that you don't really know what goes on behind closed doors. What seems like a normal arranged marriage. My father invited his friends and people he worked with, and they came to this amazing wedding, not knowing why I was getting married at such a young age. I was barely 16, 17. No one asked questions. No one at school asked me questions. And they saw me every day dirty, not looked after. My hair was never brushed. But no one asked. And if one person had stood up and said, Nina, what's going on? How can I help you? If they had shown the magic word of compassion, life would have been very different for me.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Why do you think your school or anyone hasn't asked that question?
I went to a school that was mainly white British, and people don't like difficult conversations.
Is what we said earlier, is that PC, we don't want to offend? Because I remember being in school where a lot of my Asian friends went missing, but nobody discussed it. It was just an underlining conversation of, well, this is what they do, you know, and nobody asked. Because, you know, if you're British, you should be, your expectation should be, you should be protected like any other child in that space.
I think anyone that knows me knows that I am very vocal, especially with the police. Semra and I are both on some...
We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that. But I don't hide it. You know, I was neither heard or paid. The police just didn't give me any attention. And I feel that the more... We can either work against them or we can try and teach them. And now my attitude is I'm going to try and get them to understand in the hope that somebody else might not suffer. I mean, we have Paisley sitting here as well, an honour-based violence activist
Where's
too. Her
Paisley?
sister,
Hi.
unfortunately, went to the police.
I was literally going to say nothing has changed since Banaz's case. Yeah.
And I'm sorry to call you out, Paisley, but Banaz didn't get heard. And we've had this discussion together before at regular events. And it's important for people, not just the police, but for people. There might be somebody sitting in this room right now who has a friend or a family member in the police force.
But we need to call out the racism here, because fundamentally that's what it comes back to, right? One question I wanted to ask, from your story you shared, so when you were escaping, there was an attempted murder towards you, but in that time, there was another violence that happened. So you were not even protected when you went into refuge. Do you want to explain a little bit more?
So when I left this forced arranged marriage, I left because I'd had enough. I could not cope. I couldn't cope with pulling my father-in-law off me, pushing him off me, and I got to the point where I really hated me. And I don't know if anyone in this room has ever felt that. It's a really dark place to be, where you just do not like yourself at all. And the solution to it, somebody had said to me, go back to your parents, they'll love you, right? They'll give you time. And in my little Nina head that used to read all the books and believed in fairy tales, I went home in the hope that they would love me. But I was met, as I say in my TED Talk, with furious fists. And it was the start of a very violent beating where my father and brother, they broke my arm, my jaw. And when I did collapse, my father held his foot against my throat until I believe I passed out and maybe even left this life form. The point is I'm still here, and I did get away, and it wasn't easy to get away. You know, I literally was lying in a bath of my own blood for days. And I only left because I had two options, to either go to India where they would kill me or to get away, and I didn't want to die. But it wasn't easy because I ended up meeting somebody else. I went to somebody for help, a friend from work who offered me a place to stay, and there was nothing more than that. But that led to 23 years of domestic violence because it was literally one of those sayings of frying pan to fire. I had 3 amazing children from that 23 years, but I also have 23 years of servitude where my money was taken from me, where I was expected to not only run 8 businesses, but also to give a certain amount of money monthly to him. And I was treated in such a horrendous way that, you know, it led to an attempted murder on myself and also my sons. So we became homeless 7 years ago.
And this is, by the way, very common when someone experiences severe violence or abuse like that. We can then you can easily, if you don't get the right help, you can easily end up in that cycle over and over again. So that's very common that happens. So I thank you so much for sharing.
I just want to say quickly as well, the most common question, because a recent video that some of you may or may not have seen, there's a lot of questions on this particular video. And one of the most common questions, as Sema was saying also, is why didn't you leave? You know, you were a millionaire at that point. Why didn't you go? You can run businesses. You could do it all by yourself. But people don't understand. I had this best friend from a very young age called Fear. And Fear followed me everywhere. And you have no self-worth. You have no self-belief to the point where you believe that if you leave that house, someone's going to kill you, not seeing that they're trying to kill you anyway. My pillow was set on fire. My daughter who's sitting at the front had actually put that pillow out. It was actually my daughter who saved our lives at the end of it when the whole house had filled up with gas. So it's not easy being in that situation, and you shouldn't judge someone either just because they're great in business, just because they can do amazing things. You're not them. You know, talk to them without judgment, show them compassion, and ask them something like, what can I do to help?
I think what you clearly pointing at is we make assumptions, right, based on people's background, which leads me to Sema, because Sema, when I first heard your story, and actually maybe it would be good to explain to people, you know, people always assume, hey, you know, slavery has ended, it's great, you know, we've moved on. And when we talk about slavery, usually we think of black people. Maybe it would be really great to explain to the audience your connection to this subject.
Yeah, that's my party popper. So I'm going to start my talk with the day my grandma tried to escape. Because when I heard that story, I decided I had to leave, and it really empowered me. My grandma was subjected to modern slavery. She was forced into a marriage to my granddad, and she was forced to live with him, had a few kids, and he would lock the windows, he would lock the doors so she couldn't leave. And he said, I'm really jealous. That was his reasoning. And she didn't have life outside this house. He was really wealthy, so it's not like, you know, she could do anything because everybody was backing him. And this is where the power dynamics also come into place. And one day my granddad forgot to lock the window and he went to work. My grandma realized she has a window of opportunity, a few minutes to escape, because he would realize and come back, right? So she grabbed the first kid, the toddler, my mom, because she said, you know, I can carry this one. I'm going to come back for the older ones later. She thought she would go to the police, and the whole world would be like, oh my goodness, what's happening to you? Let's help you. Let's go and get your children. She hitchhiked to the next town to her dad, who's not seen her for a while. And she thought when she shared her story, he would be really shocked and, you know, willing to help. And he said, of course, I'll help you. Thank you for coming. You know, and she didn't even question, why was my dad not visiting me? None of that. And she didn't know that actually he was planning another modern slavery for her, because he's already gotten the money for that deal. You see, he wanted to make another deal. And his business partner, the trafficker, came around and said, we're going to go and get your other children with this guy. He's my business partner. She believed, of course, because, you know, it's your dad. What do you do when you go to your dad? You believe, right? And when basically my grandma realized, she was on a boat. And she said, no, my home doesn't require taking a boat. Where are we going? And he said, this is your identity. This is your new ID. So never mind what your name was, who you were. This is your new passport. You're now a citizen of Cyprus. You know, over an hour, she became a Cypriot citizen with a different identity. And she said, this is our daughter's ID. This is her passport. And we had her together. You say otherwise, I'm going to slaughter you both, because I paid good money for both of you. So you try and escape, dead. I'll just go and buy another one. So my grandma and my mom were exchanged for a farm. You know, all the deeds were signed and everything. My mom was a baby at the time, so she doesn't remember any of this. And she just remembers growing up in a, you know, farm in the middle of Cyprus. She thinks she's Cypriot. She doesn't remember being Turkish. She doesn't remember her own father or her siblings. And when she grew up in that house of horror, you know, being raped and being basically subjected to all sorts of abuse at the same time, she's had enough, like Nina said. And my mom was going to school. You know, she was a very bright kid, but nobody actually asked her, are you okay? They pulled her out of school, and teachers just said, oh, okay. The family said she died, and they believed. Nobody asked, where's the death certificate, what's happened, nothing. And her best friend's father is a police officer. That's really bizarre. She disappears and works on the farm, picks, eggs. So he would go on trips to traffic more people, and they would not be able to escape because you're in the middle of nowhere, no means of, travel, nothing. You don't have money, you don't know what's on the outside world, do you? And you're on an island, you're trapped, very tiny island. And when my grandfather basically decided, the step-grandfather, the trafficker, he basically decided there was no other way he could exploit these people, the new kids that they had as well. He decided to go and traffic another girl. He bought a girl child, brought back from Turkey, just like, bag this, transaction done, papers, money, farm, whatever, and then brought the new person in as soon as she turned 18 and said, now you're my wife legally. Because my other one divorced me, you see. Because my grandma made a run for it again, thinking I'll come back for my children. Biggest mistake. She's not going to come back for them because nobody will listen to her. There is no laws or, policing in place to actually believe and help women. And we are still blaming women to not come forward, basically. They do come forward. And then when that new woman decided to help my mother, because she said, they're selling you, I've seen the deal happen, and you're only a kid. You're going to be forced into a marriage, and you've already been through all sorts of things. You have to make a run for it. I'll make him drunk, but you have to run when I say run. No shoes, there can be no sounds, nothing. You have to be very quiet. Run, do not stop, do not breathe, do not drink water, do not get exhausted. You do not have luxury to get exhausted. This is your one chance. Or else you will be trafficked, God knows where. I don't know where they will take you, but you won't be in Cyprus. And when this new woman got him drunk, she made a run for it. And she went to the police station after running for 3 hours, and her feet had burns under it because, Cypriot heat. And then she found the best friend's father, who haven't seen her in many years. And he was like, you're alive. And she said, yes, why haven't you looked for me? I was in the farm all along. And he basically had a mental breakdown because he said, I failed my duty of care. I should have looked for you. I should have known. I should have asked for you for the bones. Where would this kid be buried? And I haven't done my job. So he took it as a matter of honor and basically informed the prime minister of the country, everybody. They put her in childcare. And then after she was living in the childcare, there was a blood case, we call it. If I didn't get my transaction happen, we need to see some blood, basically. And then that will pay for it. That will make it okay that I didn't complete my transaction. And basically, when she was staying there, my grandma then panicked. At this time, she has paranoid schizophrenia, is not functioning, years of abuse, because this woman haven't lived a free life for a day. So she's arranged for someone she thought was a nice guy to traffic her outside the country with a new ID. Marry her, okay? Look after her, because whatever's going to happen is not good for her. My father fooled her into thinking he was a nice person, and he just married my mom when she was a kid, and he was an adult. The power dynamics are very, very clear. And although he was very young, people do try to make that very clear to me. I'm like, no.
Can I ask a question? Because what you're describing, what you kind of get into is generational trauma. Because I want to know how that impacted you physically, emotionally, financially. Because, that kind of level of that trauma stems down to you.
Well, like I said, power dynamics are very clear. I was born in a house full of inequalities. I completed my education in about over 10 schools. Would have to move around all the time because my dad would mess up. Because he would, he had a gambling addiction. He would do all sorts of things. We survived economic violence on a daily basis, which is a form of modern slavery. And we need to say it, modern slavery. We had no money. Sometimes he would make huge debts and ask for us to get a job. When I was tiny with my sisters, we would have to get a job and really cover 6-figure debts that he made. We don't know why. And we grew up very much with those dynamics. And the whole family made it clear that if my mom was to die at any point, we were basically going to be sold into forced marriages. We were currency for that family. They didn't see us as human beings. And around the time I was born, I remember they were burying girl children alive. Because once you've had a few, you can sell them. You made enough money that you don't want to feed extra throats, they said. So once you've had enough to make enough money, you want boy children. And they would just bury any of the unwanted ones alive. So knowing that, I grew up thinking, do you know what, I have to do really well in everything. And I have to keep really quiet so that they don't bury me alive because of speaking up. And I spoke up once, I remember, I wanted to continue being educated. I spoke up and half of my face was broken. It had to be reconstructed in A&E. Not one person asked, what the hell happened to this kid? And I was trying to write down on a piece of paper because I can't speak, and the surgeon just left, really uninterested. You know, why is this kid arriving to A&E like this? And I think when I thought about my mom's story, she made it very clear to us that we didn't have luxury not to go to school. And the only reason we could be educated, me and my 4 sisters, oh my goodness, imagine the risk. She's threatened everyone. She said, you touch my children, I am going to poison you all. The minute they are sold, trafficked, I have absolutely no reason to live at all. I'm going to kill you all. Nobody touches my children. They're not going to be slaves. And I heard this statement a lot, you know, throughout my childhood. They're not going to be slaves like me. So imagine growing up hearing your mom's a slave. She doesn't have autonomy over her life. And I think that's really messed up considering the war zone as well.
And I'm assuming just what's happening right now in the world, it's quite triggering, just knowing that people could be, I mean, just hearing those things could be quite triggering. And Sema, thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things I learned as a survivor over the years in any movement that we're involved in, we get to be in a position where we can change minds and hearts and also be, I guess, to be in a position where we can change policies. And I know that from my experience when I lived here in the UK and currently the work we're doing in Africa, we are actually training specifically survivors because, you know, we cannot. How do you now step away from these voices? How do you argue with these two? Because you play a critical role in now making change makers. So you're utilizing your stories. So maybe I just want to come back to you, Sema, first, and then Nina, because, you know, you both sit on a couple of advisory boards, especially for the UK government. It would be really great to get your view on where we are with this particular subject. Are any changes being made? What is your view?
It's actually very concerning, and I want to talk about why I know so much about war, why I'm an expert about everything. You can ask me about war, conflict. I know exactly where to get these terrorists, where to get all of the traffickers. And it's hard because you had to learn them as a kid.
Can I interrupt? Isn't it crazy that we can actually say we are experts at war and violence? And like, I'm actually like, oh my God, that's crazy. You shouldn't have to be that. We shouldn't have to live in a world where you're an expert of war and violence and slavery. And I think it's important for us just to sit with that for a few seconds, because that's not the world none of us want to live in. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Yep.
Thank you. And I'll tell you the day I learned about F-16 jets. I was going to high school, the whole Syrian war broke, and I live, you know, a couple of hundred kilometers from the border, basically. We grew up there, very unsafe. So growing up, going to school, you know, there's one school, if you dare go to school, it's at that part of the town, and 4 villages can go to that school. You had to walk 2 hours and 2 hours back. You had to stick to the tarmac road because you don't actually want to go in the farms or lands because you just see randomly a soldier blown off or a civilian blown off with their, you know, legs and heads all over the place. And you're just like, okay, that's happened, let's keep going to school. And there was this huge adverts about F-16 jets that Turkey just got. And they were trying to do flyabouts. You know, don't touch here, it's our town. And a lot of close war zones do this, show off the military equipment they have so that the war next down doesn't basically come to you. And we knew basically not to wear black at the height of conflict, because if there's blood on you, the Doctors are not going to be able to see that, but you don't want to wear white either because then you're going to be a target by the terrorists. You want to wear like military green, beige, so your blood can be identified. And as a kid, we were taught these at schools. You know, we were taught what happens if there's sometimes there would be a bomb breaking out, and then, 10 minutes later, we'd be like, okay, we're fine, let's continue to our classes. I remember having my first period around the time I found out about F-16. And I knew that when you see F-16, traffickers are in town. They're going to just bag any children, especially girl children, and women they see, and sell them. For all you know, next day you're in Russia. You're in a different part of the world with a different ID. You have a different name. You say otherwise, you're dead. So we knew this. And I had my period, I think when I was very young teenager. I had blood all over my legs. I ran as fast as I could home because I panicked. If they have seen the blood, these traffickers, then I would be a target. Oh my God, they could sell me. That means I could produce children, in their opinion. When I came home, I said to my mom, I'm never wearing white tights again. And I said, do not speak a word. You can't say it to my sisters. Then they'll tell their friends. They'll try to celebrate me, but that will make me a target. We've seen what happened with my older sister, because when my older sister had her period, all of a sudden there was a whole talk about how much she was worth. She could be a wife. And I've seen all of that, and I didn't want to be a target. And I think seeing all of that is really concerning, because when we look at the war footages that we are seeing, all the news coming in, we know girl children especially, I'm not saying otherwise, everybody is, but especially girl children are currencies. End of story. For traffickers, they are currency. They're means of business. And I think that's what we really need to look at. And when I sit at these, now I occupy 8 government seats, actually, the most in any nonprofit. I'd like to go into these spaces and give my peace of mind and my perspective, because they're always missing out the most obvious signs. They're not asking the right questions. And when we review cases, we cannot talk about because they made us sign NDAs. We are always asking the right questions. And I'm like, well, had it not been for these 2-3 people with the lived experience, you wouldn't be looking into the right things. Seeing, economic abuse law coming into effect only in 2022, the updates, it's very late. We are late. And it's because we're not making enough sound. We're not speaking up. It's because we don't know enough. Even being in this room is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. They wouldn't dare listen. Because out of sight, out of mind, right?
Nina, how about you? What's your view in terms of sitting in those positions?
In 2015, when I became homeless, the police came to find me. Some of you know this already, I'm sure. I didn't know what they were after. I didn't really want to speak to them. I didn't see the police as an ally. I didn't see them as an enemy. I just saw them as people that are around that don't do anything for my kind of people. But in 2015, my 6-year-old sister was abducted by my father. So many years after he had tried to kill me, he had had this illegitimate child with somebody else, got the lady drunk. She's half Polish, half Indian, my sister. Her name is Julia. And that's okay. He took her because of the word shame, because if anyone knew about his affair, it would bring shame upon the family. So he took this little girl, and if any of you have got baby sisters or children of your own, I want you to imagine that 6-year-old face, because that's exactly what I saw, my daughter's little face. He took her and he went to several countries, not just one, where he went through airport security over and over again, to the point where no one stopped him with this little girl, this innocent little girl. He left her. He left her in a place in India that harvests organs. The police went over, and they told me they'd been over, and I said, why have you not brought her back? They said that they weren't allowed into this establishment because politically it's protected. India has one of the highest known records for child trafficking and organ harvesting. And one of those harvested people are probably my little sister. She's still missing. I'm still looking. So how can I sit here and not do something? But it shouldn't take any of you to suffer in the way that I have or to lose somebody for you to speak out. So I do speak out, and Semra and I are probably the most hated people in Scotland Yard, I can tell you, because we both go in and we stand in our truth. We don't get bullied anymore. The voice I didn't have, I have now. And I don't speak for me. It's never, ever been about me. I say this all the time. But I know how it feels to be on the other side of fear. And I speak about love, which we were speaking about earlier, because I found me. I'm 53 years old, and 3 years ago, I actually started living because I found out who I was, not the daughter of an Indian immigrant, not the partner of a Nigerian person who's bullying me, not a servant to somebody who is using me for their own purposes. I became me. And I knew the thing about me was that I really was a good person. And I'm asking you to be that good person and speak out. And how do you spot someone who's been trafficked? How do you spot someone who is, who is actually in servitude or a modern-day slave? The reason I sit is so that you can see that a modern-day slave doesn't have shackles. Our shackles are different. We've had them. But I ask you to just pay attention a little bit more when you sat on the train next to somebody and not look at your phones and swipe, because it really irritates me, because you've got someone sitting opposite you that you can just smile at and say hello, and that could change their whole life. So instead of liking random people's posts on Instagram that don't care about you, start caring about the people sat next to you. Smile at them, show love, say I love you. Give that compassion that we need as a humanity, because the police don't have compassion. And I believe I can put that back into them, slowly but surely. I'm crazy enough to believe I can change laws. At the moment with the Vavengers, I've had an opportunity to get a law changed, the wording. It doesn't have to be called Nina's Law or Julia's Law. It just needs to be changed. But that means when you are going to prison for an honour killing, you stay there a lot longer. And Paisley was there when I spoke to somebody from Scotland Yard, and he told me it's not going to happen. And I'm the worst person, like Sema, to say it's not going to happen. Because I will make it happen. I will find a way. I don't give up. But a lot of you sat here, I'm sorry to say, and I'm going to call you all out, you look the other way. You give up. And even after you leave this door today, you'll say, wow, okay, but you'll do nothing. And I'm going to ask all of you to honour my story, to honour my pain, to honour Sema's story, and Dr. Layla, and to honour all of those people like Julia who are still missing. All of those children, because we can do something, because I believe in the power of people. But until then, I'm going to keep turning up at Scotland Yard, and they're going to still sigh when I walk in the room, and I'm going to stand in my truth and say, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to say something. And Sema's going to throw the statistics at them, as she does. But then one day, they're going to go away and think, something has to be done. So until that day, that's why I'm going to keep doing it.
And I think maybe a challenge for all of us, even us on this. One thing I'm ranting on about with every space I go to is language. Maybe I can challenge even us on this panel. Maybe we just remove the word modern. We just keep calling it slavery, because it is slavery, but there's nothing modern about it. It's the same thing. And let's not use honor killing. It's just straight up murder. I think once we call...
That's the wording that I've asked to change.
Let's actually, if we can just begin with that, everything will fall into place.
That is the wording I've asked to be changed.
Absolutely.
I've asked them, and Paisley sitting there, and I keep saying it, sorry Paisley, but you were there. I've asked them to take out the word honour, because there's no honour.
There's nothing honour.
But the thing is, my father was only jailed for a short period for
because the law
abduction,
says that,
because it was a cultural thing that had led him to do the act that he did.
Yep.
And I don't understand how that makes sense to anyone.
No, actually, for me, that's actually when I said that's when there's a racist policies in place. So we need to start calling out these racist policies, because just because of where I'm from in the world, my gender, my race, you cannot call it honor or I would say I would challenge us actually just call it slavery. There's nothing, because nothing's changed. When black people are being enslaved, what's happening right now, it's the same thing. There's nothing modernized about it. I think what's so shocking is that we're still having this conversation. Maybe, this is the science bit, Summer. Maybe in 2 minutes, give us some stats so people know exactly what we're dealing with.
So the current stats on modern slavery is 50 million across the globe. Now, do you believe that number? 50 million. Turkey has over 80 million people living, and in the region I lived in, I've never met a free woman. Even the judges weren't free. They were being economically abused. Their salaries were being controlled. Nobody was free. And I also want to mention the Malala effect. It has a different meaning to where I come from. The Malala effect is when Malala got shot in the head. And around that time, I went to university, being the first person to have gone to get a bachelor's degree in my family. My uncle was forced into marriage. He was taken off uni as well. All of the women were scared. All of the girls from my high school, they decided not to go to the universities that they've been admitted to. I was begging my friends, come please, you're going to miss out the late admission. And because of Malala being shot in the head by Taliban, she said, well, my dad said, if you go, you're going to be like Malala, but I'll finish the job. I'm not sloppy like Taliban, am I? And he was one of our teachers. So she's now in forced marriage, living with her children that she didn't want to have. And she doesn't have a bank account. And this is one of the reasons why I actually want to take our work globally and just recognize it as it is, because 50 million is wrong. And if you're in modern slavery, charity work or legal framework, and you use the 50 million, shame on you. Take it down. It's not 50 million. You see me, you see Nina, how do you know those numbers? Because I'm not on those stats, am I?
I am not a statistic.
Yeah, we're not statistics. It's not true. And I think we just need to look at, from a different perspective, there's a huge power imbalance in the world. And everything that's happening now, every news that we are seeing, the crisis, the displaced people, the wars, everything, it's because of power imbalance. We need to restore it. If you have benefited from that imbalance, you have a job, even though it's not you, your ancestors, you have a job to help restore that balance. And I'm really actually concerned to see news like foundations being shut down because they think it's colonial to give money to charities. I'm sorry, I was busy slaving. I don't have generational wealth to support people like me. So you're going to have to chip in and give some money. And it's not colonial. It's actually you giving the money back that you have benefited. So I think we just need to reframe our entire thought process. And when we say modern slave, it could be someone very well dressed, well spoken, right? Could be a millionaire, but maybe it's not theirs. I think we just need to reframe that.
I just want to say, what can you do?
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Of course it was.
No, just maybe if I reframe it, maybe have 3 asks to the audience and then 3 asks for me. So what can you do? There you go.
No, what can you do? How do you recognise somebody? It's difficult. Even for me, it's difficult sometimes. But when you've gone to have your hair done or your nails done, this is for the ladies, maybe the men too, I don't know. But maybe you could ask, what have you done this weekend? Or what are your plans? I did it the other day. I said, what are your plans? And the guy said, oh, I'm going to be planting some flowers. He's got a huge garden. He was showing me his garden. That shows you they have a life out of their work. Because a lot of people don't. A lot of people, they will come to work. A lot of people don't even know their own addresses. If you ask them, where do you live? Is it near? Where's the nearest station to you? Just asking small questions. Because a lot of people will have their heads down and they're scared. They're too quiet like I was. They're too scared like I was. They're too unseen. So why don't you maybe have a look and see them? Because I think as humans, we all want to be seen and heard. And it doesn't take too long for you to understand there's something wrong here. Follow your intuition. Follow it and do something. Offer them help. That's one of my asks for you. The other ask is that I've already said, love a little bit more. Love yourselves first, because when you love yourselves, you have this great feeling, like I do, that you can literally hand it out to people. And I wish, I've said this 1,000 times on my podcast, one of them is from Sean sitting at the front here, but on his podcast as well, I said that if I had the perfect job, it would be to write letters to each one of you. And you could read those letters and see how amazing you really are. And with that love, you could then take that on to the next person and the next person. And you should do that. And the third ask I've probably got for you is to support my non-profit. Someone's just walked in the room, he supports me. But if you can support my non-profit, it helps me to help others. Recently, I've had so many messages. As I said, I've had over 14,000 messages, and my daughter sat there. I sometimes don't sleep because I have to read the message. Because when you don't ask for help and you're so scared, you get that one chance sometimes for someone saying, help me. And if that one time they've asked, they're ignored, they won't ask again. So help me by donating or sharing my story, following me on social media, helping me with my posts. One of my posts was taken off recently because I said that, you know, the children and the war that's going on, it's the children that are trafficked. Sometimes we need to explain to somebody they're in a difficult situation. I'm going to give a shout out to my sister Rasha, who's not even in this country, but she runs a non-profit called Youth Underground, and I'm one of her ambassadors. She gets people that have been trafficked, and we help them to understand about living again, because you're so programmed and so brainwashed, you don't understand what normal life is. I've never really been shopping by myself, but I was forced to go on the weekend because I was alone and I needed something. So I'm still accommodating to these ways, and there's a lot of people out there that need help too. So help me to help them, help the Vavengers, help me, you know, so that we can all collectively make a bigger change, and I can do on my own.
I think one ask I'm really going to push for, it's money. I don't think activists should be working for free. I know I've been there. You know, it's really one of the toughest, but this is something you actually sometimes are forced to do. It's not an option. So I really would encourage, if someone here is connected to any kind of money, you can support raise some money, because this is not an easy job to be doing. So money, 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 money. There you go. Sama, over to you. What are you asking for the audience?
3 asks, okay. 3
Yes.
wishes, Jeannie.
3 short wishes, Sama, not...
Well, you gave me this choice. So the first one is, I think you really need to be activists in terms of, you know, supporting migrant rights. Support migrants. It basically affects the migrants more. And I don't know if because the things, you know, happen to people haven't happened here, or even if when it happened here, like in Nina's case, it's just maybe seen it's happening in this tiny little community, not really our problem. If something is happening to somebody anywhere around the world, let's say some issue affects one person, it's absolutely your business. It's your place to talk about it. You need to be like Mabel, right? She didn't say, I'm just a teenager, what can I do? She mobilized an entire community and started a charity. And if you're benefiting from that power imbalance, like I said, you have to be an advocate for migrants' rights and humans' rights in general. The second one is legal work. I can't tell you enough how legal changes, the law actually helps a lot. In Turkey, we don't have proper modern slavery laws. So imagine trying to divorce my mom from that horrendous man who's facing multiple charges. My mom has a terrible credit score because she's never had a bank account. I opened it. I forced her to open a bank account. And we had to clean up her credit score. She's never seen her daughter's home in London or Berlin because they didn't give her a visa. And yesterday she went to Berlin to celebrate my sister's birthday, and first time she's been there, she said, oh my God, I've been recognized as a human being. I have a bank account. I got visa to go and see my daughter. So this was the first time. This is the first year her actually credit score is being fixed. And I think in law we need to look into that kind of, you know, loopholes, because traffickers, you know, criminals, they're 2 steps ahead of us. They know by simply doing that, that person can't leave the country. And if they're doing it under your wings, false pretenses, the passport that you have given to them, the identity that you forced upon them. So legal changes, push for it. In the end, we freed my mum. I don't call that a divorce case last year. And she even got a settlement, unheard of. And the law firm didn't even charge us, although we're very privileged, me and my sister right now. They said pro bono. We've never seen a woman like her getting justice, ever. We got that for her. That's it, the satisfaction. So I think you need to push for a legal change. You don't need to be a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm advising 8 different boards. And the last one is money. Like Layla said, you guys, we need money.
Apologizing.
Yeah,
Money.
we need to give pay rises to the staff, hire more people. I mean, look at this. We've created a program.
It's a 24-hour job, actually.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I don't go to sleep and go, oh yeah, let me not think about girls being mutilated. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, it's ongoing work that we have to do.
Yeah. And there are some people in this room who actually acknowledged our, programs and gave us money and awards and called it gender, recipe to end gender-based violence. Be like them. Do that. That really, really helps us. That tiny bit of money, you might think tiny, goes a long, long, long way. So everybody, you have these, sheets with you, QR codes, great tech-savvy stuff. Give what you can. If you know somebody with money, everybody knows somebody with money, by the way. Ask them, bring them to us, and we're going to talk to them if you don't want to do the pitch. So money is the last one that should be on your mind.
So one last question for both of you before we go to the audience. One thing as an activist I've experienced over the years is breakdowns, not having money. Actually, a quick story. I remember getting a Women of the Year award with Cosmopolitan magazine. It was red carpets and celebrities, and I had to have tea with David Cameron at the time, who was the Prime Minister. Yeah, that's a whole different story. And, they were like, oh, Layla Hussein, amazing work, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, actually, I couldn't pay my rent today. That's really the issue as activists. And there's a lot of shame. That's why, for me, I've been very, which is going to lead to this question. For me, well-being of activists is really critical. Psychologically, emotionally, socially, financially. That's why I've become a very big advocate of making sure activists get paid, but also their well-being, their mental well-being is looked after. So for me, one of the things I've been doing for the last few years is developing emotional well-being tools for organizations. And so my question to you is, and I ask this to every activist, maybe you need to ask yourself that question. How do you take care of yourself in this space? Because you're going to have to take care of yourself. Sadly, because I know the damage I've done to myself physically. I now have fibromyalgia, lupus. Autoimmune disease is very common with activists, chronic pain. So please, share how you take care of yourselves.
Well,
if you do. If you don't, you need to be honest too.
I spend lots of money on memberships, if I'm honest. I look
for
this
you.
Great talking about all of that. It costs money. You people, okay? Facials and massages. Yep. I'm a wellness queen. I do all of it, I think you have to, though. You have to really listen to your body, and I'm really good at listening to my body. If I'm not having it, I'll just go on the sofa, my comfy cushions, right, I'm doing that. And I think it's about also having great support system. I have the best friends, and, I have the best partner in the world. Look, he's taking photos. Angles, Stephen. And yeah, shout out to my T-Bend, Stephen. And I have the best friends. I think it's really important that we acknowledge that. The wellness, to me, is to make that time. I spend the most time building relationships. And when I ask people for one thing, they do it so well. They're instantly, like, the whole Ginny thing. Grant me, they're just like, whatever you want, darling. I think that time is really, that should be preserved. And we need to look after ourselves. So I do.
We don't want to glamorize suffering.
No.
There's a culture of suffering amongst activists, because the more you suffer, more likely you might get an award. If you're actually trying to be good, no one recognizes. So we need to really shift that culture. Maybe next year we can actually reward activists who take care of themselves. We need to really change that.
Yes.
We need to shift. Really, we need to, because it's a really toxic environment. That's why I love asking that question at the end.
But also, it's about not talking to the people who are actively going against you. Yeah. So just, I think what I learned working in this organization is I'm a very passionate person. I have really high expectations of people. I like to take people on a journey, right? We're being empowered together. We're going places, whoever you are. And I think the mistake I made in the first few months was I thought everybody was ready to go on that journey. people are not on the same wavelength as you sometimes.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
They're not ready to join your journey. If their life is this, I'm there, maybe they're not okay to join that. And I think it's acknowledging that. And what you said is really interesting, because we are facing a lot of poverty porn in this country.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that. It's not cool not being able to pay your rent, right? Because you have, I don't know, generational money. Don't come and, tell it to migrants who came to this country with nothing. It's not sexy, is it?
No. So Nina, how about you? How do you take care of yourself?
So it's a bit of a rhetorical question to everyone out there as well listening, that when is the last time you said no?
That's part of
A
your
lot of us
self-care.
will say okay or not just yet. And I know that some of you sat here, Sean in the front, I've said no to him when he wanted me to be on his podcast because I had so many requests at that point, I just couldn't do it. And I said not yet, didn't I? And I was on it in the end because he didn't give up. But the point is, we often will say yes when we don't really want to say yes. We are people pleasers often because you're all sat here, so you do have compassion because you're interested in modern day slavery and what maybe you can do about it. So what I want to say to you all, and it's coming from me by doing this, is sometimes you just have to take a pause and say no. I'm really bad at stopping feeding people. My sons, my friends, my daughter. I'm constantly cooking and I've got to stop. I know that. And I moan sometimes, but all I have to do really is say no. But there'll be something you do day in, day out that you know you really probably shouldn't. Maybe you answer the phone too quickly when your girlfriend rings or your boyfriend. Or maybe at work you think you'll be the last one out because you don't really know, no one else is going to help the boss, so you think you should be there. Or maybe you think, well, no one else is going to do this, so I'm going to have to do it myself, instead of letting someone else do it badly, but let them do it regardless. So maybe it's time for all of us to take a little step in ourselves and say, let's use the power of no.
It's absolutely, and I think it's a progress. It's something we have to practice by putting boundaries in place. Actually, one of my favorite things now to take care of myself, I like going to music festivals. I like to dance. That's literally, I don't compromise that with anybody. I'm out of there. I'm like, you know what, you can wait. I'll see you next week when I come back from my dance session. So thank you, everybody. A round of applause to the panelists. So I'm going to ask someone from Vavengers with the mic. Maybe we can take a few questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, we have time for a few questions.
Perfect. Anyone? Not just a question, maybe a thought. Here, there's one here.
Hi there, thank you so much for sharing your stories. I wanted to ask a bit more about the UK context. We haven't had an anti-slavery commissioner for 18 months. We just had one appointed.
Oh, finally. That's crazy.
Yeah. We also have the illegal migration bill. We're probably working with the most racist government I've personally ever experienced since I've been to the UK. So what do you think is the political context, the political future for survivors of modern slavery? Because I having worked with a lot of survivors, I think it's incredibly grim. And how do you keep your resolve in the current context?
Yeah.
I mean, the NRM system is tanked, first of all. It's like you said, grim, right? When I heard about the Home Office, actually, quote, I say, migrants are gaming the system. This is what was said last February by a Home Office representative. And I think hearing these are really hard. But I'm actually very hopeful, if I'm honest, because we are in these spaces. And, whenever we go into these spaces, we bring more of us. And there are brilliant new voices coming up. We have Hiba here in the room. She's setting up her organization. We're helping her with that. She's going to be great. And her voice is loud. And I think we need to give more platform to people. So if you have a platform, share it. Because the context is grim. It's terrible. It's not going to good places, I'm telling you.
The other option is that I just run for Prime Minister.
You see how simple this is? Just get to the point. Let's not tiptoe around this. All right, one more, another question. One here, then at the back. One more there, and then someone at the back.
So it's great what you guys are doing. What would be your sort of top tip for somebody who's in a really bad position? It's quite a big step to take. They don't know if their phone's being recorded, if they're being watched. The police may not help as well, and they might go back to exactly where they started and in a worse position. What would you say, in your opinion, what should that person do as a first step to try and get out of their situation without the fear of being caught?
Come to a Vavengers hub. That's what they should do, and we'll sort them out.
I mean, one of the hardest things is asking for help. It's just so hard. You're almost embarrassed, you feel stigmatized, you feel shame. You feel, what if I ask for help and nobody does? Then what do I do? And I've asked and I've put myself out there. So I think if you know anyone, and it's a great question, Sean, if you know anyone, give them a little bit of comfort. Don't force them to do anything. Because if someone had said to me, you have to get out, and my daughter said it lots of times, just to give them that comfort and maybe tell them that they deserve better. One of the things you were saying earlier about wording things, I say to the police, don't say to somebody, do you want to press charges? Because automatically you're backed into a corner. Why don't they say to them, you matter, we want to help you, to give them that confidence then to ask for help. So speak to somebody. So if you are in a position, and there will be lots of people sitting here, I know, that are suffering from domestic violence or mental abuse or physical abuse, I know that. I'm really good at reading people. And asking for help, as I said, is not easy, but it's going to be worth it, because on the other side of fear, I'm here. I'm living my life, and I'm loving it, and I'm free.
First of all, I want to echo what the person before me said and say thank you so much for speaking. I want to say how amazing and how much courage it must take. Hey, Simma, how you doing? And how much courage it takes to sit there and share with a room full of mostly strangers, right? But actually the real step is even getting out of bed sometimes with everything that you've been through. So you're inspiring so many people. So I just wanted to ask you two quick things. The first thing is, what kind of gets you out of bed that we can share with other people who might be going through a similar situation? And the second thing is, I'm a little nervous to ask this actually, but I think it's important. What lessons need to be learned by either the people watching, because the people who go through the trauma, they're obviously going through trauma, like you've shared, but the people standing by, the people who are perpetuating these really horrific crimes, what kind of thing do you think needs to change? Is it the education of young boys who become men? Is it their view of women? Because it's not all men, obviously, but we're talking about a minority that are powerful and doing these things here and around the world. So two things again to summarize. One, what gets you out of bed that we can share with other people? And the second thing is, what is the trauma that the men are going through that they think that this is okay, basically? And what can we do to stop our young boys becoming men who have these views?
Does Stephen get you out of bed, Summer?
No, I get myself out of bed. Look, I have great hair, great skin, okay? I think that gets me out of it. It's another day of being semi-gonal. It's a great time to be me. I think that's what gets me out of bed. And when I was in the situation during the childhood, economic abuse every day, modern slavery, I think procrastination of possibilities got me out of bed, because I had a plan, you see. And that plan got me out of bed. And when I walked free, I became the first free woman. And I thought about that film trailer in my head. And now what gets me out of bed is actually being able to help thousands of women and children every year through Vavengers. I mean, what a great job we're doing. Not to pat myself, but yeah, I will. I think that's what gets me out of bed, thinking that we actually hold power and people think women don't have that power. We just need to push for it. And if you're not given platforms, build it. Bring others. And if you're going up, send an elevator down. That's what gets me out of bed. You answered that, Dibble.
Yeah, no, like you said, build your own platform, a lot of people said no to me. I was sending out 20 to 30 messages, probably 40 even. Kevin probably remembers that, every day, asking people, can I be on your podcast? Can I be on your podcast? One of the first people I asked, he wrote Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy. His name's James Whitaker. And he said no. And I thought, I really want to be on your podcast. And last month I was in Los Angeles and I was on his podcast. And you know what? It's the case of not giving up. For me, I could be coaching fighters day in, day out. For those who don't know, James over there is my close protection. He's an MMA fighter, an ex-MMA fighter. I could be coaching people like that all day long because that's what I do. I'm good at it. I understand them. I get people. I get their pain and their trauma. I can help them. But my passion, my purpose is what gets me out of bed every day. Knowing that there's somebody out there that needs to hear my voice, that needs just to have a little bit of love that I can extend. Just a message or a post that I might put up that might resonate with somebody. Somebody might need to hear that message. And that's what really helps me to get up. Because I believe that I am living my purpose.
Sorry?
What gets you out of
Well,
bed?
by the way, sometimes it's okay to be in bed too. That's what I learned. I'm telling you, if my body says stay in bed, and my husband's in the room, someone who really encourages me. He's like, you know what? He goes, if you want to stay... And I've had moments where I really could not get out of bed. You're like, do I need to brush my teeth? Like, you're really asking yourself those very important questions. And to have someone who just make it okay, you know, here's some toast and some tea, you don't need to leave. It's okay not to get out of bed. Because you know why? Mind my language, we are fucking tired. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Just being a black woman existing in this world, we are tired. So I'm okay being in bed sometimes. But in terms of what usually gets me out, I guess it's coming to spaces like this. I mean, I flew 9 hours for this event, and Vavengers are the only people who get me to come out here for 9 hours. And I think loving myself, I really loved what you said earlier, because I always say, I actually started living my life at the age of 14. There was something about my daughter turning 18, because I gave my whole life to her and to this movement. But also one thing I learned as an activist, my life is not about also this movement. I have a life, and I would absolutely tell you, please have a life outside of these spaces, because we need to go and charge our batteries. I always use the concept of the empty cup, because we give, and there's nothing left in this cup. So it's really important that I remove myself. Actually, that's one of the reasons I moved to Kenya, because London activism can be quite tricky with the current situations. I will not name anything. I currently work on a program funded by the UK government, so I'm not allowed to say certain things.
Well, I would actually say to everyone to come along, if you're a female, because it's only a female thing, to one of the Vavengers hubs, because you would bring a different kind of energy. You don't have to be someone who's suffered, but the ones that come there often come for guidance. And there might be something you might say that might help them, but you can see what we do. We're there day in, day out, helping people, giving things away. But if you were to come along, imagine the difference that you could make. You know, it'd be more of a community. You could add that onto your social media to encourage other people to come forward, because someone in your circle might know that. Somebody that needs that help too.
And I'm very proud to say Dahlia Project has now partnered with Vavengers, and we're actually going to be part of the hubs where we're going to bring the psychological support for the women. So if you have any skills, you could be making tea. You know, you could be making tea, holding Sema's bag. Like, sometimes we need people to help
please,
us.
yes,
With
yes.
that, we need
Echo
that kind
that.
of support. Someone to develop content, like whatever skills you have, please bring that.
But we also do a mindfulness thing, and Rebecca's at the back, and she's amazing.
Oh, yes.
I love it when
Again,
she's
that's
there.
part of your care, right? How you take care of yourself. Maybe I can take 2 more questions.
I think we just have time for one more.
One more, okay. There. Sorry, guys.
I'm going to stand up. I just want to start by saying I know all 3 of you personally, and I am so
Hi,
moved.
Paisley.
Hi. I'm so moved by each and one of you, and thank you so much for sharing so much personal and vulnerable things with us this evening so that we can learn. And I really appreciate you talking so much about self-care and that we need to be taking care of ourselves as activists. So I hope you both do that, all 3 of you tonight. But I guess what I want to say is I I want to just ask you if you can share a little bit about what someone can look out for if you think someone is in this position, if you think they need help. Is it looking out for something, or is it approaching it a certain way? And where would you direct them to get support? Thank you again so much for an amazing evening. We've learned so much. Thank you.
Can someone answer that question?
So to answer that, I think you just need to have a chat with people and really, really listen. Because my mum, for example, in her case, she's asked for help from everybody. She asked for help from her real dad, from her siblings, everybody. Everybody knew it. And she actually said, I had to give birth to the person who could save me later on. How terrible that is, that I had to wait 50-odd years for my own kid, for my own flesh and blood to help me, because everybody knew. So I can't really say she's not asked for help. I think when she had those conversations, people just were like, what a shame, I can't really do something about that, can I? The hopelessness. So really talk to people and listen to them. And you can actually do lots by reaching out to charities like us. You're not powerless. We have a lot of movement power, people. We sit on, 10 government boards amongst ourselves. That's not nothing. We can actually help people. So if you've heard of it, you can have a conversation and realize, I would say simply, somebody who does not have control over their life should be considered being subjected to modern slavery. As simple as that. You don't have control over your finances, any aspect of it, this or that, surviving that. And you need to be able to define that for the person and say, let's go and get you some help. That's as simple as that.
I want to say thank you to each one of you. You've given up your time, and I really value your time. When people send me messages, I always say to them, thank you for sending me a message, because I know they've stopped doing what they've got to do in their daytime, and they've given me that time of day. So I want to say thank you to everyone that's here. This is one of my favourite parts of the evening, probably, because we're going to acknowledge somebody who herself has been through modern-day slavery. Are we all right to go?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
So people, please stick around. We want to talk to all of you. We have some team members. They'll make themselves known to you. We really want to get to know each and one of you. There are so many new faces, and there's so much that we could be doing. So stick around. The team will move majority of the chairs from the back. So we have the space. There will be live music starting in 10, and Sabrina Elba should be arriving soon. So when that happens, we will be acknowledging this very special person that we've mentioned tonight. So yeah, stick around.
Wow, everybody, thank you so much for showing up for this space. Please take care of yourself, hang out, chill, and a massive thank you to the panelists who shared their stories. Thank you.